Hello YouTube. I did a post 2 weeks ago asking what you guys would like to see on this YouTube channel, since I'm currently on summer break and I have a little bit extra time that I want to spend on trying different content that I usually do for YouTube. And I gave 5 different options, and by far most of you guys wanted me to react to League and Twitch clips. So in today's video, I wanted to take a look at Skill-Capt's video and want to give my opinion on if Skill-Capped is worth it or not, both their free YouTube channel but also their paid own website. And the video that I chose today is how jungle pathing has secretly changed. I haven't watched the video, but
for us jungle mains, it
let's
has
just see.
thankfully been a significant amount of time since we last saw massive jungle changes and overhauls. However, we have gotten a lot of little adjustments over the past season or so that have all added up to create a very different jungle, even from just last year.
True.
The dangerous thing is that because none of these changes were very significant by themselves, the overall state of the game has moved drastically while players have failed to adjust at the same rate. Today we're going to break down exactly how you need to change your thoughts about pathing to stay up to date and not fall behind without even realizing it. And if you really want to path your way to ranking up, then you need to go to skillcap.com.
Yeah, we don't really care about this, so let's just skip.
We have players.
Okay, here we go.
Alright, now let's get back into the guide. To address why a vast majority of players hold beliefs about jungle that are now outdated, let's take a detour for a bit to talk about how things used to be, and show how quickly they can change. There have been times where being able to fight for a 2-minute crab at level 2 was an absolute necessity. It pushed champions that were weak in early skirmishes completely out of the meta, and it was dominated by
Camille jungle.
Camille and Xin Zhao.
Back when she could stun minions or jungle monsters.
In order to get push priority to rotate right away. Getting crab meant you were insanely ahead of the enemy jungler, and because of this, the only real viable route was red straight to crab. As a correction to this, and as an attempt to shake things up, Riot delayed the spawn of Scuttle Crab from 2 minutes to 3:15. While this did alleviate the issue, they continued making more changes regarding Scuttle Crab, such as making the crab not just spawn on one side of the map, and then going further to adjust the amount of experience that it gave to be much lower. This created a lot of diversity within the game and was overall a lot of healthy changes in my opinion. However, the player base failed to adapt in one critical way. If we go look at the League of Legends wiki page for jungling and scroll down to the common jungle route section, we're going to see one of the lingering effects of a meta where there really was only one viable option. The fact that this section exists at all is something that I have an issue with. This lists out 13 steps and pre-plans the game out from before you even load in all the way up until level 6. This may have been necessary at some point, but no longer is. Yes, there were times where experience from camps was so nerfed that the only way to get a decent amount of XP was to get kills, and the only real route you saw was buff Gromp into a gank. There was also a time that camps hurt so badly that some champions were just strictly incapable.
I mean, some people still do buff Grump into gank. Like, that's still a viable route. But let's see. Not sure why we're talking so much about the past, because the past doesn't really have any relevance to what is happening now. So
that your champion determines the route that you do. Camp damage was nerfed across the board, making it so that it's easier for every champion to clear. Gromp now heals you upon kill, which is a more recent change than a lot of people actually seem to think. Kill XP has been drastically nerfed over the years, and so has sharing XP for pushing waves. Crab is worth less and less, and camp respawns are longer.
Yep, so overall jungle has just been nerfed.
Clear and spam full clear to not fall behind by default anymore. Nor do you have to skirmish for double crab if you just can't win the fight early. The point that I'm getting at is that there used to be just a clear best route in a lot of cases. But in Season 12, and hopefully beyond, this just isn't the case anymore, and has turned an okay way of thinking about the game into a very dangerous one. The vast majority of junglers that I coach tend to pre-plan their routes and list off steps just like this, like the wiki page does. They tell me I'm just going to full clear and then look for a gank, or I'll get level 3 and go for a gank. Something along those lines. But in a game where we have so many...
Well, this is good if nothing happens on the map. But you can't go into the game and then say, okay, I'm gonna full clear like 6-7 camps, get my level 4, and then I'm gonna go for a gank, because there will be situations where you need to adapt and say, okay, my laners are all inning at level 1, they're all inning at level 2, they're all inning at level 3, they burn summoners, and then you have to gank at level 2 or level 3 depending on your champion, rather than just farming for level 4. So the idea of knowing what type of pathing you would do is good, but that doesn't mean you have to stick to it, because anything can change within like a few seconds. That means that you need to adapt your pathing towards what's happening on the actual map. If nothing happens on the map, sure, you can just full clear, that's fine.
more options now than we used to have.
Unless if you need to invade, but...
steps like this, you've eliminated half of your options for absolutely no reason. Let's look at an example Smurf commentary that I played to show how this should be applied. I opt to start at my red in this game and clear down. In the end, I just full clear my jungle and end up doing all 6 camps. While someone who flowcharted their decision making could end up getting to the exact same outcome by just following the wiki page, we did so in a very different way. Let me walk you through all of the decisions that I needed to make in order to arrive at this outcome. As I'm doing my red, I needed to think if a level 2 gank or adapting my pathing in any other way was a viable choice. From here...
Okay, there's no way that as Diana you're gonna go for a level 2 gank. On top of this, there's something that I have issues with skill cap, is that they're not showcasing the entire thing that's happening. So what I mean by this is, we see that, okay, we are playing Diana jungle, but we don't know what are the lane matchups. We don't actually know what is the enemy jungler, and we don't even know what is the enemy jungler's pathing. And all of these things we need to take into account before we can make the best decision, because without having all the information possible, we can't possibly make the best decision.
Here, I have tons of options, like going to Krugs, going to Raptors, invading, running straight mid, and more. In this game...
Okay, so he says he has the options of going to Krugs, going to Raptors, going for an invade, going into mid lane. So just to point it out, we will just give it some numbers. So option 1 is we can go to Raptors, to Krugs. Option 2 is we can go to Raptors. Option 3 is we can gank mid. And option 4 is that we can invade. So if we start with the first option, being that you can go to Krugs, this is pretty good, because this will basically apply that you kill an altar camp, meaning that you will only need 1 camp more for level 3. And it also keeps up with your CS in case that you want to full clear. So this is pretty good. Going into Raptors, there's no point for you really going into Raptors as Diana, because the only thing that it means is that now you're forced to take an altar camp, meaning you're gonna have to run back up to your Crux or all the way down to Grump in order to get level 3. And even then, a level 3 Diana gank is not even all that good. So yeah, I would not personally go on Raptors almost ever. Then he says that he can go into mid lane. Well, yeah, if he takes Q plus E, then he can, but if he takes Q plus W, then he can't go mid lane. On top of that, we need to know what does Lux have in terms of abilities. If Lux has E, the gank is less likely to work out compared to if she has Q, because maybe they invaded level 1 and she started a Q. So all of these things we need to take into account. We also need to take into account how is the mid lane wave looking. Is Talon pushing it with W into the Lux? Then that's good. If Lux is pushing it with E into the Talon, then it's bad. So all of these things we need to take into account before he can say, oh, I'm gonna go for a gank level 2 in mid lane. And then when it comes to the fourth option being that, oh, we can just invade, then what I will say is that this again depends what type of jungler are you playing against. Are you playing against a heavy farming jungler that is really weak at level 2? Then yeah, you can go ahead and do so. But are you playing against a champion that's really strong at level 2, like a Lee Sin or like an Olaf? Then you can't do it. And then in terms of the junglers that you could potentially invade, I mean, you could invade some of the tanks, but then you need prio because you don't kill them all that fast. Maybe if it's something that's not really popular or common in the meta that doesn't have a good clear, then again, you can also do it, right? But what you need to take into account is the fact that Diana is also a scaling jungler. She's also a somewhat power farming jungler, and she scales decently well. So that's what you need to focus on, that you do have decent scaling, so at least go for that. Yes, you do have other options, but you need to think about every single factor that can affect your decision in, let's say you go mid lane, or let's say you go invade. That can be affected. So in terms of these 4 scenarios that he came up with, I would say that the best one would be Crux. I wouldn't personally go for Raptors. This mid lane gank depends a lot on your mid laner and what abilities you have, and then the invade also depends on, well, what is the enemy jungler looking like, and also what are your laners looking like, because you need to have prio in order to make this play happen. Therefore, you can't just do this every single time. It's good to think about this and say that you have 4 options, but in reality, you don't have all of these options, because we don't know all the information that we need in order to make these things work. And especially Raptors, I completely disagree that the fact that it's an option, because that should not really be an option on a jungler that can clear 6 camps before the Skull Crab even spawns. But let's hear.
Any extra information that would make any options stand out more than just doing Krugs to keep the option of a full clear open. But you have to be on the lookout. An example of this would be if my bot lane hard traded at level 1 during my red buff clear. In this situation, I would be incredibly likely to want to do Raptors to accelerate how fast I could get to bot side to potentially react to a play that is now more likely to happen. But why didn't I say at this point that I would do red Raptors Gromp and look for a bot gank? Because after Raptors, I will still have plenty of other options besides just going to the Gromp. The way you need to think about jungle is actually a series of branching decisions that need to be made. If you think in linear steps, you're essentially just making a decision further down the line with less information than you could have had if you had just waited to commit to it until later. If I did red Raptors and then started walking bot side, but my bot lane died as I was walking by mid, I probably wouldn't opt for Gromp anymore.
Then you would go for Wolves into Gromp and then blue.
But if I lock in my decision earlier, I might end up making a very poor choice for the current game state. In a game of incomplete information like League, the information available and consequently the decisions that become good change over time, which is why the most valuable thing you can do sometimes is simply delay your decisions. Mid is hard trading, so I could look for something after I do Raptors here. Wave doesn't look to be in a very good spot for that though. Notice how even though I mentioned looking for something mid, I don't go for it. And it's because of the information gathering that I was doing while clearing out my camp. Talon is playing further back and Lux's wave is pushing into him. It's unlikely that any gank will work here unless Talon just wants to die, so it's not really worth my time to go, at least not in the current game state.
Yep.
So I know I don't want to go mid, but I don't want to make a decision yet about exactly what I should do next. But why? Because by the time I get to my next thing, the game state is going to be completely different. A decision that seems best now could be the literal worst choice in less than a second from now with new information. I need to think about what my branching options are from here, which right now mostly consists of wolves, a gank, or an invade. Of course there are more, but I'm picking between the...
Yeah, and again, this is another issue, right? We still don't know what is the enemy jungler, like what is the champion. We also didn't get any information on where did the enemy jungler start. We didn't know who ended up leashing. We don't get any information on what is the current trinket situation. So another bad thing is the fact that he didn't use his trinket for any information, and the fact that he doesn't have red trinket in case he wants to go for a gank. That's another thing. So now he's saying that okay, he can go for wolves. Yeah, that's fine. That's completely normal. Like, you are playing a power farming jungler. You can go for a gank. In terms of the gank options that you have, I mean, yes, you have a pike that could potentially hook, and yes, you have a Lux that could potentially bind. So yeah, you can actually gank if the right situation occurs. And then the third thing is that we can invade. Well, no, we can't invade, or at least not from the information that we're given, because we don't know where the enemy jungler started. We also don't know the enemy jungler at all, like what champion they're playing. Therefore, we can't do the invade because we are not given enough information to take this decision. Maybe he knows, but he just doesn't explain it or showcase it in the video, whatsoever. So the only two options he has is actually either going for wolves, which is passive, or going for a gank, which is aggressive. And it all depends on how the enemy laners are playing.
At a given time. And what you'll notice when thinking of all of these options is that they share one common path that branches off at a certain point that I like to call a pivot point. I shouldn't pick between any of my options at my Raptors when I finish them because I can just use the walking time between them and the pivot point by my wolves to kill time and delay information. That mid gank that didn't look possible earlier could be the best option by the time I get here, and then I can change my mind on it and go mid. This concept is very similar.
What I typically do is I make the decision. So if I'm doing this camp, so if I do a full clear and then I path from Raptors, I typically take my decision right here. So I look an extra time at what's happening mid, what's happening at bot. Now you guys can't see that I'm typing, but I'll showcase it up here. So I'm basically gonna look at mid lane and bot lane, and then I determine what's happening mid, what's happening bot. And if something's happening mid that I can affect, then you would go mid, just like he showcases here. And something happens bot, then you would go bot, as I showcase here with my yellow mark. But if nothing happens, then you just do your wolves, right? So this is good, but I'd simply just do it right here whenever I actually enter into my bot side jungle.
Get here, and then I can change my mind on it and go mid. This concept is very similar to how the weather forecast gets more accurate when it gets closer to the day you're trying to predict. You'll be able to make better decisions when you just don't try to make them too hastily with not enough info. In my actual clear, this ends up helping me as I get done with my Gromp and look bot to get information. Got a level 4 here and they're still playing incredibly aggro. So I'm just gonna look for this. This looks like just a free double without me though. I can't count the number of times that low elo players will just miss out on a free gank exactly like this because they choose to full clear into Crab. Likely because they were planning on doing that since the start of the game and didn't adapt. Part of the reason that high elo junglers get fed so often in low elo is because they recognize plays and adjust pathing accordingly. They actually are fighting for push, so I'm gonna skip camps here and go Gromp. Either that or the enemy bot lane didn't fight for push. I don't really know which one it was. I just want to go right now. That's really good. Senna flashes forward. Jinx needs a flash out and heal. It's totally fine to view full clearing as the default template for what you should do for your first 6 steps of the game, but only if you are constantly looking to change those 6 steps to something else at any given moment.
And again, this is also incorrect because this depends on what type of jungle are you playing, because some junglers cannot clear 6 camps. There are some champions that can do it, but there are some champions that should do only 3 camps into a gank or 5 camps into a gank or into an invade, and some will do 6 camps. So yeah, just even having the idea of, oh, I'm gonna do a 6 camp clear on every champion in the jungle is also incorrect because they clear at different speeds.
Even that, if new information presents itself. The name of the game for Season 12 is flexibility, and learning how to read the map in order to adjust pathing. It is by far the most valuable skill for junglers to acquire, yet the one that seems to be the most unknown to players. If you stop flow charting your routes and instead look to consider every route as an option in a bag of tricks, you'll be unpredictable and also more effective. Alright, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more.
Yeah, I mean, overall the video was pretty good. He said a lot of good stuff, but this is an issue that I have with SkillCap, is that they're not giving us enough information so that we can take the same decision as they are doing, because we're not playing the game and we're not being showcased what is actually happening in the game. In terms of all the options that were given, yes, it's good that he's showcasing that there are all of these options, but he needs to show, or he needs to explain which options are good and which ones are bad, depending on different champions, situations, wave states, matchups, whatever it might be. And then we can basically understand why is it good, why is it bad, and then we can apply it to our own games. So overall, not too bad of a video. He said a lot of good stuff, but there are those smaller details that are missing out that can be important, especially when it comes to decision making and macro. and how to gank and how to clear and whatnot for junglers to learn from this. So my opinion on skill capped is pretty much the same as when it just got released and I tried it out. It's good for newer players and it's good for lower elo players, but if you're already above, I'd even say platinum, there's no point in really going for these type of videos because you should already know all of this, and you still need to be aware of the fact that you will maybe learn most of the things that you need to know, but there are exceptions to these rules that they are applying. And therefore, you can't 100% trust these videos and just copy what they're doing in the videos and expect them to work, because that's not how League of Legends works, unfortunately. So yeah, not too much else to say. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like. If you have any feedback, or if you want me to react to a specific type of League video or Twitch video, then leave it in the comment section down below, just the name of the video, then I can find it, and then I can react to that in the future. And then always subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And then I just want to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next YouTube video or on my next live stream on Twitch. See you guys.